What's up, everybody? Rusty Buckets here with your Bucks 2 cents talking Memphis Grizzlies injuries. Everybody take a deep breath. I know we all have PTSD from all the injuries of last year and the Notes app screenshots from Grizz PR, but this is not last year. My day job, I'm a physical therapist. It's what I do. It's what pays the bills. And so I can kind of nerd out on some of these injuries, and I promise not to. But I thought it'd be good to hop on here and talk everybody down a couple of notches about all the injuries. You know, we were celebrating, taking a victory lap for only having 4 guys on an injury report. We haven't had a clean injury report in 3 years, which is wild to think about. But down to 4 players, now 5 with the addition of Zach Edey, is a huge step in the right direction from where we've been. Speaking of Zach Edey, DeMichael Cole tweeted out a picture of the shoot-around as of this recording today, Tuesday afternoon, before the Memphis Grizzlies take on the Denver Nuggets in the NBA Cup game. And Edey didn't have crutches, a brace, air cast, boot, nothing. That's a really, really good sign. Cam Spencer, when he turned his, I read that he had some fractures in his ankle. That complicates things. Bone can take anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, usually around 6 weeks to heal. You add on to that if you have to have surgery, which thankfully he did not. But he's also a high-level professional athlete. Yes, he's going to be spending more time, rehabbing and strengthening to try and get back. But also he puts a much greater demand on his body than you or I do. I'm active, I go to the gym, but it's nothing like a professional athlete. So that's why his is taking a little bit longer. Edey not having any kind of an assistive device is what we call that, is huge. The fact that he can bear weight, he can walk, albeit gingerly, is a great sign. Usually ankle sprains about 2 to 3 weeks if it's a low-level grade 1, which his hopefully, knock on wood, looks to be. I think we'll get more updates closer to game time and as the week progresses. But I am cautiously optimistic about Zach Edey, even given our medical team's history of slow playing these injuries. Vince Williams Jr. is another interesting case. He had very aggressive shin splints, which is microfracturing or small fractures in your shin bone, in your lower leg. Typically see that in runners, triathletes, and basketball players. It's an inflammatory or stress response to repetitive trauma. So running up and down the court led to some of this, which is why they're slow playing his return. Look, I've been a mouthpiece around increasing our guys' minutes and giving them more run. And I'm also a huge Vince fan. He needs more minutes, but not yet. Let that heal. The last thing we need for Vince is to run him out there for 30 minutes, flare that up. We get inflammation back in the bone, and it's hard to get rid of, and he's going to be on the shelf for another month or 2. 14 minutes against Denver might have been a little bit more cautious than I would have been, but I like seeing him getting some run and getting his legs back underneath him. Ja Morant's injury is a bit of an anomaly. Everybody saw DeMichael's article, which was well-written, where he interviewed an orthopedic surgeon out in L.A. and said this injury typically only happens in car wrecks and in contact sports, not basketball. Ja Morant's not your average basketball player. So that awkward landing angle caused what's called a subluxation at his hip joint, where the bone pops out and goes back in on its own. It's a common thing in the shoulder, the ankle, the wrist, more mobile joints. But the hip has got a big bone in your pelvis and a ton of big muscles and ligaments holding it in. They're going to slow play it a little bit, not because of re-injury, but because of damage to tissue around it. If that hip's even a little bit unstable because it's still healing or there's inflammation in that joint, it could tear a ligament. It could tear his labrum, which sits in the hip joint, causing much bigger issues down the road. Look, Ja himself said, expect him back sooner than later. I trust the source straight from the horse's mouth. I think we'll have Ja Morant back sooner than later, just like Zach Edey. I don't think either one of those are going to be long-term issues. I think we could have them both back within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Gigi's a little bit different. All of us know he had that surgery to pin that fracture in his 5th met head or the metatarsal. It's the long bone in your foot, and it's the one on the outside. It's where that little bump is on the outside of your foot. And it can cause a lot of issues with runners or people who are up on their feet a lot because it bears weight, a lot of muscles attached there. So if you got a fracture, it's an unstable surface for those muscles and then for your body to stand on. And that fracture is just going to be super painful. So he's been in a boot, allowing that to heal. He's coming out of that now and going to start doing some walking and probably some light jogging, getting him on what's called like an Ultra G treadmill that changes his weight bearing through running, because your body does heal through walking, running, and that just repetitive bounce in the bones in your lower leg. It's a cool process, but I promise not to nerd out. Again, Gigi's timeline still feels right. End of December, early January. If he has a good recovery and some basketball drills, maybe a little bit sooner, hopefully it's not a long-term issue. These fifth med head fractures can be finicky. There's not a great blood supply to that area, and so risk of re-injury is a bit elevated. So again, I promised, like I said, I was going to try and talk us down. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to Gigi, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind. I don't think any of these injuries are going to be long-term. Again, I think we'll get John Edey back within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Cam Spencer's already started some 5-on-5 drills, playing some basketball. I think we'll see him in South Haven some before we actually get him in Memphis, which is good. Again, he's a professional athlete, got to learn how to use his body again as he's healing both nerves, muscles, ligaments, and then the bone fracture that was in there. And Gigi's timeline is the longest. I think if we play it right with Vince too, we won't have any more issues with him. We get Gigi back after the first year, we'll be healthy and back putting the NBA on notice. So Grizz fans, take a deep breath. I know we're all panicking because of the injuries, but none of them are that bad.